Hey guys, it's John from 16 Views, and today we're going to break down sensor size and why it matters in your image. Okay, so sensor size refers to, prepare to have your mind blown, the size of a sensor in your camera. Pretty amazing, right? There are a ton of reasons why sensor size matters, but for me personally, and I think most people, it really comes down to three main things. The first being just better overall low light performance. As sensors get larger, they're able to handle a higher ISO, which basically makes your image brighter. If you want to learn about ISO, I made a video about it, so it's up in this area, so check that out if you kind of want to learn about ISO. Manufacturers can also fit larger pixels on a larger sensor, and this is great for low light performance. Think about it. If you have, let's say, a 20 megapixel sensor, 20 megapixels means 20 million pixels. If you have to fit 20 million pixels on a half-inch by half-inch square, the individual pixels are going to have to be a lot smaller on that half-inch by half-inch square than, let's say, if you were to fit 20 million pixels on a 1-inch by 1-inch square. Just because the surface area is so much smaller, you have to make the pixels much smaller on the smaller sensor to have the same resolution. So on a larger camera with a larger sensor, you have more surface area to increase the pixel size, which is really good for low light because a larger pixel can then intake more light and make your image better. Number two, the natural depth of field larger sensors have. With a larger sensor, you just get a better natural depth of field that you just can't get with smaller sensored cameras. That's why you just can't get crazy good cinematic footage with a smartphone camera. The reason behind that is a big part of cinematic video is the blur that distinguishes the foreground from everything else that you're shooting, or your subject from everything else you're shooting. And that blur you just can't get with an iPhone camera. Smaller sensors in an iPhone or in an Android just don't allow for that kind of depth of field that makes it look so good. Lastly, bigger sensors just look better. Smartphone cameras are getting amazing with computational photography and all the AI that manufacturers are baking in, but there's just a look about a larger sensor that just makes the image look so much better, and I think most people would agree with me. And smaller censored cameras will just never be able to recreate that look of a large sensor. Now, let's compare the sizes of sensors. So let's flip up to the top-down camera. Okay, so camera sensors come in all different shapes and sizes. Wait, actually, I don't think they come in different shapes. I'm pretty sure every single sensor is going to be 16 by 9. All camera sensors come in different sizes, but I'm going to go over the most prevalent ones that you'll probably see. So I'm going to start at the smallest sensor and then work my way up to the largest. First up is going to be the main camera sensor on the iPhone 11 and then iPhone 11 Pro. This number here, that's the measurement of the size of the sensor, but it's really confusing and it doesn't really matter, so I'm not gonna go into the detail of explaining it, but just like, don't even worry about it. But next up, we got the Galaxy S20 Ultra camera sensor, and this is one of the biggest sensors on a smartphone right now. Next up after that is the 1-inch sensor, and you see this in devices like the Mavic 2 Pro as well as the Sony RX100 series point-and-shoot cameras. The 1-inch sensor is where you begin to see slightly better depth of field as well as better low light performance, but it still isn't great. It's much better than smartphone sensors, but it isn't quite to that really good, you can trust it level. Okay, next up is micro four thirds, and this is the size sensor that you begin to see in like big DSLR cameras. And I would say the most popular camera that uses a micro four thirds sensor is the Lumix G7. If any of you guys watch The Everyday Dad, I know he raves about the G7. It's a very good camera. This is where you really begin to see good depth of focus as well as pretty good low light performance. After 4/3 is APS-C, and this is the sensor size you will see in a majority level of mirrorless cameras. You'll see this sensor in the Fuji X-T4, which is my dream camera, so Fujifilm, if you watch this, I mean, if you partner with me, if you sponsor me, I mean, imagine how many people you could influence, like all 33 of my subscribers, so Fuji. Smart business decision. But besides the X-T4, it's also the Sony Alpha line of cameras, so the 6400, 6600, 6500, as well as the Canon M50. And APS-C, in my opinion, is the sweet spot for camera sensor size because it's big enough to have great low light as well as really good depth of focus, and it's not too big like a full frame sensor, which then makes the camera body really big and then more expensive. So I say APS-C is the sweet spot for performance to price to size, that ratio. You got me? Yeah. Okay. APS-C size sensors vary just a little bit. The Canon sensors are a tiny bit smaller, but you really won't know a difference. Like it's very, very small. Like, what is it? 1.4 millimeters. So you're not gonna notice a quality loss or anything like that. You'll be fine. Finally, the biggest sensor in most consumer level cameras is the full frame sensor. And this is really just the big poppy of consumer level sensors. It gives you great quality, great low light performance, and the depth of field is phenomenal. Since it is quite a bit bigger, it needs a bigger camera body, and these cameras tend to be more expensive in the $1,200 to $1,500 plus. And some of the most popular full-frame cameras would be the Sony A7 line as well as the A9 line and the Canon EOS R, which I know a lot of YouTubers and vloggers use. You'll see bigger sensors, but those are like in red cameras and like cinema cameras, which I don't really consider the consumer level. I think of the full frame sensor as the biggest sensor, the best quality sensor that you can get as a consumer. That's it for me today. I hope this answered any questions you have about camera sensors or anything like that. Like always, if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. I'll answer them as quickly as possible. This is John from 16 Views. See ya.